Okay, it's 1300 hours. We're going to go ahead and begin this on time. We're going to have some colleagues coming in here, including our author on the Senate side, Senator Gillibrand. She'll be here momentarily, but in the interest of everyone's time, I know we have votes coming, I want to get going here. I just want to express my deepest gratitude to my colleagues here today. You see, one of the things that you're clearly going to see is this is not only bipartisan, this is bicameral. This spans all the spectrum, the ideological spectrum. We have from the Progressive Caucus to the Freedom Caucus and everybody in between. And we're joined here today with veterans. We're joined here today with a widow who's going to speak. And we're joined here today with service organizations. And we're here today to demand justice for our sailors who served in Vietnam. You know, I think that everyone here is tracking that when this law was initially passed, it excluded no one. It was about presumed coverage for those that were exposed to Agent Orange who served in the Vietnam War, and then attendant to a rule that came out in 2002, finalized in 2002, you had to have served on the ground or in the riverine Navy to get presumed coverage. Now rest assured that these members here today, we fight every day, case by case, for the sailors who were exposed. We fight for their cases. We win some. We don't win all of them. That needs to change. The underlying law needs to change. There should be presumed coverage. And, you know, that's why we're here to do two things. One is we're calling on the Obama administration to reverse the decision that was initially made by the Bush administration and has been continued on in the Obama administration. We want to see the VA go back to the original language. And then, of course, the second thing is, and here's the senator here, too. You're going to be on just a second. God bless you. Thank you, Senator. And the second thing is that to really raise the level of consciousness about how deep and wide the support is for this critical legislation. 320 members of the United States House co-sponsors. And in the Senate with Senator Gillibrand and Senator Dane, nearly half of the Senate on this bill. And this impacts up to about perhaps as many as 90,000 sailors. And we know that there's maladies with cancer, with diabetes and Parkinson's, just to name 3 of the 8 or 9 associated maladies with exposure to Agent Orange. And that's why we're here today. And I really appreciate everyone being here. And I want to turn to our author in the Senate side, Senator Gillibrand. Thank you.
So much, Congressman. Thank you all. Good to see some of my old friends standing with me. It's wonderful. Thank you, Congressman Gibson, for not only putting together this event, but for your leadership and your determination and your stick-to-itiveness to get this bill passed. This is so important to our veterans. It's so important to our nation and to our moral character as a nation. We must stand by those who stood by us. So I want to thank all of you who are standing with us today, all of my colleagues, all of our advocates, for working so hard to pass this important legislation. Under the current VA rules, the only U.S. veterans who are counted as having been exposed to Agent Orange are people who actually walked on the ground on Vietnamese soil and the people who served on boats in Vietnamese rivers. This means that thousands of U.S. Navy veterans who were exposed to Agent Orange while stationed on ships just off the Vietnamese coastline are not being served adequately by the VA. This doesn't make any sense, and it isn't fair to those veterans who also served and also encountered Agent Orange and who are just as sick today. Agent Orange did not discriminate between those who stood on boats in rivers and those who stood on boats offshore. So why should the VA and our country discriminate against them now? Because of this arbitrary and bureaucratic rule, thousands of Navy veterans are suffering without the care they have earned. And every day we wait to change it, more Vietnam veterans continue to become ill and go into bankruptcy from trying to pay their medical bills because they aren't getting the coverage they deserve, need, and have earned from the VA. We need to pass the Blue Water Navy Vietnam Veterans Act, and Senator Daines and I will be pursuing this bill in the Vets Omnibus bill that we should get on the floor, I think, next week. So frankly, this is something the VA should have fixed on their own. There's no reason for the VA to keep rejecting these veterans, and they could change this arbitrary rule today if they only wanted to. So thank you to my colleagues. And is Senator Daines here yet? No, he'll be here shortly. But I do want to thank Senator Daines for being an outstanding partner in the U.S. Senate, for being a champion in the Senate to get this done. And I want to thank the bipartisan support of over 40 of my colleagues. Thank you so much.
Senator.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to bring up Congressman Valdeo. Congressman Valdeo represents Southern California. He has been a staunch supporter of this bill. He has worked really hard. He has communicated that to the leadership. We deeply appreciate the leadership he's brought to this, and I give you Congressman Valdeo.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. This issue is extremely important to me personally, and is especially important to the thousands of veterans who are exposed to chemical agents during their service but are currently ineligible for benefits. I'm proud to join Congressman Gibson and all those in attendance today to bring awareness to the Blue Water Navy Vietnam Veterans Act. It is far past due that veterans receive the care and treatment they deserve, and I cannot stress enough how critical it is that the administration and the Department of Veterans Affairs get on board. Veterans throughout the United States have made immeasurable sacrifices for our nation, and we are forever indebted to those who have served. Ensuring proper health care for active and retired military personnel is especially important when it relates to the injuries sustained during the service to our nation, and is a small yet very important symbol of gratitude for their service. So thank you, Congressman Gibson.
Thank you so much. As I mentioned, this bill is very robustly bipartisan. I mean, quite candidly, there's slightly more Democrats than Republicans, and leading that formation is Joe Courtney, a tremendous representative from Connecticut who's been fighting for sailors and their families for the longest time. And I'd ask Joe to say a few words.
Thank you, Chris. As he noted, so I come from the part of Connecticut where the Groton Navy base is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. Thousands of sailors are serving there today, and their parents and their relatives are in that region. And this arbitrary barrier to allow people to get needed help and support for life-threatening conditions and diseases is just totally unjustified and way overdue in terms of fixing. Secretary Shinseki, with the stroke of a pen, opened the door for presumptive eligibility to a whole series of ailments about 4 or 5 years ago. But again, this requirement to step foot on land, as Senator Gillibrand said, still stands, and it's time to knock that down and to allow tens of thousands of Navy veterans who served under terrible conditions in one of the country's toughest conflicts to get the help that they need. So I stand with Chris and all my colleagues to make sure this happens, and it could happen literally with the stroke of a pen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Next, I want to bring up Senator Daines. Senator Daines, before he went to the U.S. Senate, was a co-sponsor of this bill last Congress in the U.S. House. We appreciate the collaboration, the teamwork that he has brought forward with Senator Gillibrand, and I'd like to give you now Senator Daines. Thank you. Your daughter's doing a great job, too.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, thank you. Today, notice Senator Gillibrand, a Democrat from New York, and myself, a Republican from Montana, are joining in this bipartisan effort. We have senators and members of Congress here fighting on behalf of our Vietnam veterans. It's to ensure that the heroes that have served our country are going to receive the care and treatment that they deserve. Senator Gillibrand and I fully intend to fight for this bill to be an amendment to the VA legislation. It's unconscionable that the VA is denying benefits for Blue Water veterans who suffer from Agent Orange. I stand here today with many, promising you that we will never stop fighting for the benefits our veterans deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Thank you. You know, what's also at stake here is really the trust in our government. This is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And this legislation, I'm sure my colleagues join me on this, is very much constituent driven. You know, the folks that are standing here today, and we're going to hear from Carol Olszewski in a second, but I just want to say before Carol, I first learned of this issue through Susie Belanger, who's also here today from Elise Stefanik's district, and Elise, of course, is also very strong on this bill. But, you know, she explained to me how critically important it was that we address this issue. And then also, after redistricting, I picked up Carol Olszewski in Ellenville, and Carol lost her husband to Agent Orange exposure, a sailor, at 57 years young, went to heaven. And Carol has been a tireless advocate for this. And Carol, we deeply appreciate your leadership, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.
Yay.
Hi, my husband is gone. It'll be 14 years on June 10th. Before he died, I did file a claim for him with the Department of Veterans Affairs. They never denied him, they never awarded him, they never acknowledged him. When the claim became mine after he died, I had no idea that they had changed the law about boots on ground. So when I went back to the VA to ask for benefits, they told me I would never get anything because my husband was in the Navy. I said, watch me, don't get in my way. Okay?
Hey.
Well, 4.5 years later, 2 trips before the Board of Veterans Appeals, I won my claim. Once I won, I sat down and I gave this a lot of thought. And I said, you know, over the years, I have done a lot of research. And I saw that John, my